Hi, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the show, The Strange Reality with Dave Emmons, and a lot of strange things that's going on and we can't figure out. It's driving everybody crazy. I know everybody's pressed down about that, but I talk about that all the time, I guess, on the show. But it's the truth. I mean, we have to learn how to get by, survive, and try to make this world a little bit better. And we have to take care of ourselves first, and then try to treat everybody else with kindness and love. And this racism or whatever is going on has got to stop. But also, so doesn't the illegal immigration has to stop too. But we'll see how that goes in the future. I got a guest today that's a prolific book writer from what I see and what I call him. He's been around for a while and he's gotten involved in rock and roll and all kinds of stuff. His name's Maxim W. Furek, and he's been writing books for some time. Maxim is an avid student of the paranormal. His eclectic background includes aspects of psychology, addictions, and rock journalism. That'd be interesting too. Just that'd be a topic by itself. He has a master's degree in communications from Bloomsburg University and a bachelor's degree in psychology from Aquinas College. Maxim has written numerous rock biographies and paranormal theme books, such as The Flying Saucer Esoteric, The Altered States of Ufology, and Coal Region Hoodoo. We'll be talking about those. Paranormal Tales from the Inside the Pit, Sheppton, The Myth, Miracle, and Music was featured on Australia's Mysterious Universe, and Hangar One will publish up his upcoming book, The Last Tribes of Bigfoot. That's wow. You cover a lot of ground, Maxim. Wow. Maxim has been interviewed on podcasts, including Exploring the Bizarre with the legendary Timothy Green Beckley, Art Bell's Midnight in the Desert with Heather Wade, and Paranormal 60 with Dave Schrader. Yeah, Art Bell was a great guy. Really great show. He is a respected contributor to Fate Magazine, Normal Paranormal, and Paranormal Underground, showcasing his expertise and knowledge in the field. Flying Saucer Esoteric is Altered States of Ufology, explores the chronology of flying. I'm getting dry mouth. Flying saucers, tracing historical accounts of theologians and astronomers who lived in the days before Christ to the 2023 congressional hearings and the Mexican alien corpses. This disclosure thing is a little tricky and a little bit conspiracy too. Flying saucer esoteric confirms how testimony from contactees, abductees, space explorers, and hoaxers flowed into our collective consciousness, creating the amazing realm of ufology. Coal Region Hoodoo, Paranormal Tales from Inside the Pit, has been described as a fascinating book into Pennsylvania's paranormal wormhole through a never seen before sociological and popular culture lens. He was the guest speaker at the 2023 Western Pennsylvania Cryptid and Supernatural Expo in Johnstown, not Jamestown. Always want to say Jamestown, but it's Johnstown, PA, and the 2024 Institute of Hermetic Studies conferences. Maxim W. Furek, welcome to the show, buddy. Thank you for coming aboard. And could you tell us a little bit about yourself and some of the things that might have been left off that list?
Yeah, well, Dave, thanks for reading that War and Peace. Boy, that was an effort. I apologize, but anyway, yeah. Well, you pronounced my name right. I'm
Great.
Maxim
Yeah.
W. Furek. I'm a snowbird, actually. My wife and I spend winters in Florida on the Gulf side, out of the hurricanes so far,
Right.
so good. And then we spend summers in Pennsylvania. And I do my writing in both places. I mean, like both places are very conducive to writing. But as you said, I'm a former rock and roll journalist. My avocation was I was a psychologist. I was in charge of a drug and alcohol program. And, sex, drugs, and rock and roll tend to go
Right.
hand in hand.
Mhm.
And so, like, I was really fascinated by these new drugs, like beyond LSD, like ecstasy and Rohypnol and bath salts and just all these synthetic cannabinoids, all this crazy stuff that promise euphoria. But many times, what happens when you take these hallucinogens or the stimulants, you are so amped up that you hallucinate and you become psychotic. So,
Mhm.
this potential nirvana actually turns into a hell. So, just I studied that. I did programs on that, and I was really had a fascination for that. Wrote a number of books about rock and roll, and I love it. I mean, that was my passion, still is. But back in 2016, I published a book called Sheppton, The Myth, Miracle, and Music. And that's 9 years ago. So I've been in this paranormal realm for 9 years. It's taken me this long to get to this point. But I was writing a book about a song called Timothy, which was a 1971 song by a group called The Boys, and they
Hmm.
were from Wilkes-Barre. And there was a connection between the song Timothy and the Sheppton Mine disaster of 1963. So what I did was I was started to research this book on Sheppton and realized that there was a connection between the song Timothy about cannibalism and what happened in Sheppton. And in Sheppton, it was the same thing. Three guys were entombed for 2 weeks. Only two came out, and they wanted to know what happened to the third guy. And a lot of people then and to this day believe that he was cannibalized. So that story plus the paranormal themes surrounding Sheppton just drew me in and really sort of I never went looking for the paranormal, Dave. It found me, it stalked me.
Right. It will. It'll come towards it. I know a little bit about what you're saying. I played music for 42 years. I drank a lot. I didn't do drugs.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, but and also
Okay.
I'm an ET experiencer, so I know a lot about some of the topics you're going to talk about. But it looks like to me you have a wide range of topics. You get into the paranormal, you get into cryptids, you get into Bigfoot, you get into ETs, and you're into music and this Sheppton thing, the miracle and music about.
Yeah.
I guess, or you want to finish off explaining the Sheppton event?
Yeah, so as I'm uh, investigating Sheppton, I found a correlation between the song Timothy from 71 and the mine disaster from 63. So I'm doing all this research, and here Sheppton was a story about out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences, afterlife experiences. Pope John the 23rd, who had died in June, was there for 2 weeks in August of 63. They saw him when he was canonized as a saint. They talked about Sheppton being one of his miracles. The miners also saw humanoid creatures. They saw golden cities in darkness. I mean, there was a lot of weird paranormal things that happened in Sheppton, and Sheppton was the thing that was the gateway. That Sheppton opened up the doors to the paranormal for me. So again, that
Yeah,
was 9 years ago,
yeah.
and because of Sheppton, I was invited to all these paranormal conferences and podcasts and the whole thing. And Sheppton really, blew it up, and it was my Krakatoa.
No. Well,
So,
you've done everything but being an MD doctor. And I was going to ask you, why is my throat so dry? And especially when I'm talking with an allergy. I have allergies, and man, they're kicking my butt. Okay, now I'm going to go stop sharing on this one, and we're going to come back, and then you're going to talk about other books. But do you want to finish off with Shepton, I guess? Uh,
yeah, so Sheppton was pretty amazing. So I had that published the first day of 2016, and it's been a huge hit. It's been a huge hit. And one thing I want to say, again, after 9 years, we are talking to some New York City producers. These are the same people that do the Oculus Alchemy TV program out of New York City. And we just did a shoot on Dr. Santee, the White Witch. He was the high priest for the Coven of the Cata. That was in a tiny little place called Walpolpin. So that was just 2 days ago on Saturday. Or no, just yesterday, Saturday. Or no, let me say it again. It was on Friday. It wasn't Saturday. It was on Friday, August the 9th. So they did this shoot, these people from New York. And now the next project, once we get this Dr. Santee documentary out there, then we're going to do the Sheppton mythology. And this is exciting stuff because they want to do a full-length documentary, and they want to take it to Tribeca and Sundance and all the other ones. So I
yeah.
am so excited. It's like, here's the metaphor. You're at the bus station, you're waiting for your bus to come in, and you're waiting and you're waiting. It's like waiting for Godot. And then finally, there it is. It pulls in, the doors open, and it's arrived. So for me, it's taken 9 years, but things are looking good. I mean, a lot of things are happening
No,
in my career
yeah.
at the same time.
And actually, you're at my age, and maybe you're too older, and you're still active, and that's the good thing. Got to keep that mind going. Sound You're a very sharp guy. Uh,
Well, thank you. Yeah.
okay, what about these ETs? What did these miners see, Maxim?
Yeah, they saw. Now this is in pitch darkness. They saw these humanoid uh, creatures. They look like Grecian warriors, and they saw them in the light. They saw lights shining, and they saw doorways in the mine. They saw stairwells with relatives and ancestors. And even though they didn't know who these people were, they recognized them as their ancestors. So it was a stairwell going to heaven. It was almost like an afterlife experience. The miners experienced an out of body experience. The one was a devout Roman Catholic.
Right.
And I believe that this had something to do with St. Teresa of Avila, who was the 14th century Spanish, 17th century Spanish mystic. And St. Teresa of Avila said that through prayer and meditation, we could reach states of rapture and ecstasy and the flight of the soul. And she was talking about an out of body experience. And that's exactly what these two miners experienced. They found themselves going up through that mine shaft and looking down and seeing thousands of people there at the rescue site. And that was Salvation Army, National Guard, military, the rescue teams, the media, the paparazzi, and the hangers-on, the spectators. But thousands of people there in Sheppton, Pennsylvania, a tiny little patch town in '63. And this lasted for 2 weeks. It was one of the most significant news stories of the year, surpassed only by the assassination of President Kennedy in November of 1963. So Sheppton was a huge story by the Associated Press, and it had international fascination. There were camera crews from the UK, from Germany, from Japan that were there following this story of human survival. And what happened was after they were finally rescued, and by the way, and here's something I want your listeners don't know this because nobody knows this, but the rescue technology that was developed in Sheppton in 1963 was later used in 2010 in Chile. The Chilean copper mine disaster, a
Right.
movie called The 33,
Mm.
33 Chileans were rescued by Sheppton, Pennsylvania Rescue Technology. Nobody knows about that, and there's a sign there outside of Sheppton, talking about that, proclaiming it. But that's one of our claims to fame, and we're so honored about that. But it's like a bittersweet thing because nobody knows it. We're in the coal region of northeastern Pennsylvania. So we never got that acclaim. Maybe because we don't have the media outlets that say they would have in Chicago or Philadelphia. I'm not sure, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Isn't it strange though how the news media and one story can take precedence of another story, and then you miss the other story? Like right now, the news is moving so fast.
yeah,
We go from attempted assassination all the way to now Kamala and all this intrigue and the convention and everything, and
yeah,
it's one and it's just and all the security is that's needed now, and it takes away from like UFO disclosure, in which we want to
yeah,
talk about that, but there's not
yeah.
much moving on that. There's a lot of people talking about it, but I'm not sure about disclosure, Maxim. I just not I'm not sure. Did the government get involved in that Sheppton incident that you just talked about, Maxim?
Yeah, yeah, they did because Dave Fellon, who was the owner of the slope, the mine, he was an independent miner. And what they did was there was this thing called pillar robbing. And what they would do is they would go into these old mines that were already spent, and
Mhm.
they would have pillars of coal, rich coal, holding up the mine. So they would go in the back and start taking out these pillars. It was rich coal, rich anthracite. They would start in the back and then move towards the entrance. And what happened in Sheppton was that they weakened the whole structure, and it all came down. This was on a Tuesday in 1963, and what they did was they filled up a buggy with coal, sent it to the top. The foreman, George Walker, emptied it. He was the tipper, and sent it back down. And as it was coming back down, everything went to hell, and then there was the collapse. And they had what was called the rushes, like they would have one collapse on top of another. And the configuration of the mine kept on changing. There were places where the miners had to crawl on their hands and knees. There were other places where they could actually stoop or stand up, but it kept on changing. And I wrote about this in horrific psychological terms. I mean, what would it be like to be crawling on your hands and knees, bloodied, in pure black darkness, sucking in coal dust and
Right.
dirt and everything else, and having no optimism, no sense that you were going to be rescued, none whatsoever. I mean, to
Very.
be in that place of despondency, total anhedonia. And that's what they experienced. And when I wrote a chapter in Sheppton called um, Extrication, and I wanted to write it like a horror movie, and this was the most horrific chapter. People told me they couldn't read that book at night. When a lot of people read
Yeah.
before they go to bed. Don't read Extrication. Don't read that chapter because it's all about claustrophobia and being pulled up that mine, being rescued, and it was pretty horrific. I mean, my only regret is that I didn't add another 5 or 6 pages to that just to
Right.
to really work it.
Or throughout the book, I haven't read the book or anything, just getting a synopsis. But when you say these beings showed up, well, they're holographic. And second question to that, do you think they could have caused the mine to collapse, Maxim?
No, I don't think that they were malevolent. I think that they were. I think they were possibly guardian angels or spirit guides who manifested and gave them a sign that they were going to be rescued. So they
Oh,
were holding things, uh, objects, and they didn't seem to. It was they didn't. The miners didn't feel threatened. The other one was the image of Pope John the 23rd, who stayed in the corner with his arms at his side, giving them the sign of peace that they were going to be, that they should be relaxed and that they were going to be rescued. In all three of Pope John the 23rd's miracles, here's the thing, all three of them happened after he had died. And all three of them, it was the same MO, the same modus operandi. He was just standing there in the corner, not saying anything, just looking very peaceful and relaxed, and uh, giving these people, like in the case of Sheppton, the miners, cause to be optimistic that they would be rescued. So that's
yeah.
what happened.
Yeah.
The
Have you
Pope
ever?
the Pope didn't talk. They didn't speak. The apparitions, the spirit guides didn't speak to him.
Mhm.
And again, all this happened in pitch darkness.
Now, have you visited that site? Number one question. Number two, I know the Pope and his staff. I don't know. He's a group of people that his committee, they come out and they were talking about the people are seeing, supernatural things. And he said there's going to be more supernatural things crossing the barrier. We're going to be seeing things we've never seen before. And the Pope said that. And
Yeah.
so is that what maybe they're thinking about, that we are seeing like UFOs and ETs and these supernatural things, like these cryptids are showing up at different places
Yeah.
right around where I live, up just north of me, talking about, they saw some kind of a cryptid go across the road before they drove by. They slowed down, they looked at it, and they're, so it's all over the place. It's just not just one region. Cryptids
Right.
and UFOs, it's all over. But what do you believe about the Pope and his committee, his staff that studies this stuff? Do you believe that they know more than what they're telling us, Maxim?
Well, I'll tell you what, in the this is interesting. I'm glad you brought that up, Dave. During the July 2023 congressional UF hearings, David Grush, the former military intelligence guy, said that he knows where the crashed uh, saucers are, and he knows where the bodies are. And he talked about in the 1930s, Mussolini found a crash flying saucer. He gave it to the Vatican, and then the Vatican turned it over to the United States. So that's what he was saying. There's some documentation of that, but I think the Vatican has probably one of the most extensive spy networks
Right.
that probably rivals the CIA and the KGB, only because Catholicism is throughout the world, so they have their agents or whatever. So anyway, they have intel on the ground. They have a better network than anybody else does. So, I think the Vatican knows things that maybe they're not sharing with us. Uh, I'm thinking, back in the 50s, they said that if we could prove that aliens do exist, a lot of people, a lot of government people now felt that the American public could not uh, accept that. We could not tolerate that because it would go and turn our whole mindset of organized religion and society on its head. And they were afraid that just this would make the world, the whole society unstable. So that's why they were keeping a lid on this if there was anything, to be disclosed. I think the same thing with the Vatican. I think that they're being very cautious about what they say, and what they say is pretty much within that Catholic doctrine.
Right.
So, so anything beyond that, and I'll tell you, here's one. I do a presentation called Catholic Mysticism, and I talk about the saints and the mystics like Saint Teresa of Avila, Padre Pio, Saint John of the Cross, Pope John the 23rd. When Padre Pio was a priest in Italy, people started to come to him to be healed and to see his stigmata. He bled the wounds of Christ.
Mhm.
People were coming there. Thousands of people were coming to see Padre Pio. And the Catholic Church, the Vatican, didn't know what to make of that. What's going on here? Thousands of people are coming to see this person. Some people thought that Padre Pio was delusional, but that he was clever enough to convince thousands of people that his delusions were real. So the church was skeptical. They started to send people there to watch him, and he did have the stigmata. What they did was, this is pretty interesting. If your readers don't know about Padre Pio, he became a saint, but Padre Pio bled. He had stigmata. He bled the wounds of Christ. And what the priest did was they wrapped those wounds up with gauze, and they watched him for something like 6 or 7 days. And they unwrapped the gauze. Now, they were looking for signs of healing, to demonstrate that Padre Pio was a human just like you and I.
Right.
And
Mhm.
when they took out those bandages, he was still bleeding. Those wounds were raw. There was no signs of healing. He bled, he suffered. Another thing about Padre Pio that's really fascinating is a term called bilocation. Numerous documented events where Padre Pio was at one place in Italy doing a presentation in front of hundreds of people, and then also he was someplace else, maybe 50, 75 miles down the road, talking to another group of people. Both events, he had witnesses, he had things documented, two places at the same time, by location. You tell me what that is.
A
And
holographic double, maybe, huh?
yeah, right. For the 30s and 40s. I think, with all these things, with whether it's Padre Pio or Saint Teresa of Avila, I think these are uh, mystics that have devoted their life. They're pious. They're holy people, but they only do what they do through the power of God. All things through God. I mean, it's not that Padre Pio was healing people or that Saint Teresa of Avila was levitating, but it was through God. And that was the other thing about Saint Teresa of Avila. With her prayer and meditation, she believed that you could get into states of ecstasy, rapture, and flight of the soul. And there was documentation
Mhm.
of Saint Teresa actually levitating, where the nuns had to
Right.
hold her down from this.
Well, mysticism can also be called like ETs, maybe in the past, thousands and thousands of years they've been around, that mysticism could have also been magic, that they knew how to produce magic. And the bleeding that you're talking about, there's been some medical professions that have said that that's kind of fake because some people can bleed. It's like Jesus Christ, he bled from the head and forth
Yeah.
when he had that, visitation. But could it be a medical stigma, whatever? Could it be that Maxim?
With I've read extensively about Padre Pio, and he has a place in Bartow, Pennsylvania, right outside of Valentine. It's his monastery. So we've gone there to look at his museum, to read about him, to buy his books. And I've read extensively about Padre Pio. He suffered for his faith. He suffered with the stigmata. He was embarrassed by it. He wished that it would go away, but it didn't. He was never. There was a short time in his life where the stigmata did go away and heal, but it came back. So no, I don't believe that it was. It was even though the Catholic Church, some people felt that he was a con artist. Even today, there's people that believe that he was one of the greatest con artists. So, I believe that what happened was valid, was true, that it was a miracle of, a miracle, God, Christ working through him. But you don't have to believe that. I mean, that's just my stance. But I do this presentation on Catholic mysticism, and I'll tell you what I found: an audience. I found a whole bunch of people that hunger for that knowledge, because Catholics typically don't talk about that. I talk about exorcism, and Dave, I had the opportunity to meet Ed and Lorraine Warren back in 1988, and I was friends with Ed and Lorraine. They were the ones that are responsible for the Conjuring 1, Annabelle Comes Home, The Nun, Nun 2, all that.
Right.
Something like 9 motion pictures worth like $2.2 billion. So that was a successful horror franchise. Ed and Lorraine came to northeastern Pennsylvania to help cleanse the Schmerl haunting. It was our Amityville horror. And typical poltergeist activity. There were the smells, the grunts. Jack Schmerl, the husband, claimed that he was raped by a female succubus, a demon.
Right.
Horrible things happening there. So Ed and Lorraine Warren came, and they were co-writers for a book called The Haunted. In 1988, they came to Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania, and I was there. I wrote a letter to the promoter, and I was able to take pictures of them. And if I can, after this, remind me, and I'll send you some of those pictures that I took. They're great. Ed and Lorraine Warren, 1988. And I kept in touch with them, but I would ask Ed questions like, how did you do battle with these demons? And Ed Warren told me that he would go and assume the persona of Jesus Christ, of Michael the Archangel, and of Padre Pio to do battle with these demons.
Right.
That's what he did. So again, here's another thing. I mean, you may or may not believe in Padre Pio's stigmata, and you may or may not believe that there's a demonic world where there's malevolent spirits, and that by opening up Ouija boards, tarot cards, or whatever, they may be portals to these forbidden places. So,
Well, I'm very open-minded and a consciousness. I can believe these things that are happening, and there are miracles. There is supernatural things going on, and it's admitted to. You mentioned something here. Was there positive proof what these miners saw? Number one, and number two, you said there was a song called Timothy that fit the Sheppton narrative.
yeah.
What's that? Was that all about?
Okay, so as a rock journalist, the song Timothy was the one that got me involved in this paranormal. It was that one song. Timothy was recorded by a group called The Boys, Buoys, and I wrote a book called Somebody Else's Dream. Can you see that, or is that reversed?
Yes, I can see it. I can see
Okay,
it.
Somebody Else's Dream. There's The Boys, and it's called The Boys, or Dakota, The Boys, and Timothy. And the biggest selling song in northeastern Pennsylvania was Timothy by The Boys. So of course I wrote a book about that, and this is a great book. This came out in 2021 to celebrate the 50-year anniversary. There it goes.
We already got your book cover on video.
That was good. That was duct tape.
But Timothy, what was the song about? I mean, what
Okay,
so good?
so the song was written by Rupert Holmes. He was the Pina Colada Man. He was something like 19 years old. He was working at Scepter Records. He was trying to write a song to get some notoriety for The Boys. He was just trying to evoke controversy. So Timothy was a song about 3 people in the mine, and it was about cannibalism.
Right, you mentioned
Timothy, Timothy, where did you go? Timothy, Timothy, God, what did we do? You know, a line, hungry as hell, no food to eat, one of those. So anyway, Timothy, the song from 1971, seemed to parallel what happened in Sheppton in 1963. So as I was delving into the research of Sheppton, I noticed I came across all these paranormal aspects. And again, the song Timothy got me into Sheppton, got me into the paranormal. And that was 9 years ago.
Mhm.
I didn't go looking for it. I didn't ask for it. I'm a rock and roll guy, a rock and roll journalist. And all of a sudden, I have my fourth book on the paranormal is coming out in September. That's the Lost Tribes of Bigfoot, and that's going to be on Hangar One. Those are the guys that do Monster Quest. So, I'm looking for big things.
Yeah,
And with
Hanger One is my publisher on a couple of books.
oh, good. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
do you know Eric and Doug?
Yeah, Eric and Doug Highcheck. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, good. Okay.
They
Now,
have,
do you have that IBT, that immersive book technology?
no, I don't.
Okay, yeah. So
I
with
just I just delved into I guess AI, illustrations, drawings. I
okay.
just got involved in that. Did my fourth book is a sci-fi, and I did all the illustrations on that
Oh,
book.
cool. Well,
So
what a small world, though, isn't it?
yeah, yeah, it is.
No, yeah,
Alex and Doug are great people. My goodness.
yeah,
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 they've done my first book, and they did my third book. But the sci-fi book, they don't deal in sci-fi. They do in factual things or
yeah,
something fictional. Now you also, I guess, you're talking about this Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross.
yeah. Kubler-Ross, yeah,
What did she do
yeah.
in the story?
Okay, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross was one of the foremost abstract thinkers of the 20th century. She was just one of the brainiacs. She was just an intellectual. She wrote a book called On Death and Dying, and she taught us the whole process of grieving. The person, you just were telling me one of your close friends died. A lot of us, when we suffer the loss of a loved one, we have disbelief, we have anger, we have negotiation. God, if you bring them back, I'll be good. I'll change
Yeah,
my ways. And then finally, and it takes, for some people, it takes years, but finally we reach a point of acceptance where we accept the fact that our loved one has gone, they're dead. So Elizabeth Kubler-Ross did that. Well, what happened was there was a guy named Ed Conrad, and Ed Conrad was really important to the Sheppton mythology because he was a journalist. And what he did was he took the miners down to Bridgewater, Virginia,
okay.
to meet Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She was a Swiss psychoanalyst, and she interviewed them, and she said that what they experienced was an example of life after death. And she was talking about the manifestation of Pope John the 23rd. And again, Pope John the 23rd died in June of 63. Sheppton took place for 2 weeks in August of 63. The Pope was already dead when Sheppton happened. I was talking to a Catholic nun, and I said, Sister, did you know that all three of the Pope's purported miracles happened after he died? And she goes, well, of course. And I said, well, what do you mean, of course? She goes, well, he died, he went to heaven, and he got his authority, his power, and came down and worked his miracles. So that's how she explained it. But the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross was a amazing individual, and by Ed Conrad introducing the miners to Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, what that did was it took the Sheppton mythology, it took Sheppton out of like a mythological context or a supernatural context and put it more into a scientific realm. So again, Ed Conrad had psychologists and psychiatrists talk to them, tape record them, do lie detector tests, the whole thing, affidavits. I mean, he did it all just to validate and legitimize this. And, I can't say enough about Ed Conrad. I have a chapter in Coal Hoodoo about Sheppton and Ed Conrad. And, he needs to get his kudos. He was just a pretty important guy.
We'll bring that book up next. But I got to ask you this question here. Discovery Channel SOS Spirit of Survival called Sheppton Scientific Documentation of Life After Death and a Passageway to the Afterlife. What did they mean by that? I mean, I think you covered almost everything, but the exact, what was the bottom line to all this?
Yeah, if you might even be able to Google SOS. What what is that? Stories of Survival. Is that what it's
Yeah,
called?
right. Spirit of survival.
Spirit of Survival, and they interview Davy Fallon, one of the miners. So they interview him, and he talks about seeing the Pope and the humanoids and all that. So it's really good stuff. But they believe that the miners, experienced life after death, and this was a portal leading to other worlds, other places. So this was like not of the earth; it was something of the paranormal, and it's funny because Sheppton is such a fascinating story, but very few people have heard of it, even though it's been on the Spirit of Survival, which is sort of obscure. But and even with my book, even though it's the book has been hugely successful and popular, but still people aren't really familiar with Sheppton
Right.
and with the Chilean copper mine disaster of 2010. We should know about Sheppton, at least about the rescue technology, but we don't. So, and even with Sheppton, tell you something else. During that rescue in Sheppton, Pennsylvania, Howard Hughes, the billionaire from Houston, Texas, had tungsten uh, carbon bits, flown up to from Houston by Navy jets to Hazleton, Pennsylvania, so they could use these to cut down through 330 feet of rock and coal. So Howard Hughes, the billionaire from Houston, also fit into the narrative. So you had people like Howard Hughes and Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, a bunch of people. There was just an amazing array of people that were, part of this thing.
Yeah, isn't that
It,
something that Howard Hughes, a strange guy as he is,
it was, yeah, I know.
he gets involved in
Yeah,
good things. It's just almost like Elon Musk,
yeah,
man in the world. He gets involved in things that are actually for all of us, plain people. That's not the rich
yeah,
like him. Uh,
yeah.
did you want to go to that Hoodoo book and talk about it?
Yeah, but just to finalize Sheppton
Okay,
was the book
go ahead.
from 2016, 9 years ago, that got me into this whole thing, and it just kick-started it. And like I said, I had to go looking for it. I mean, but I'll say one thing, Dave. The paranormal community has been very, very respective and accommodating, and I can't say enough about how wonderful this has been. Going on the podcast and going to conferences and having people asking me about Sheppton and all that. I mean, it's just an amazing group of believers. I can't say enough about it, and and I'm glad that we have shows like you that approach this topic in a respectful, manner, and I think that's
Well,
important to do
it's
that.
actually to enlighten people. That's what I feel a need to do because
Yeah,
I've had experiences since I was 13 years of age. And so I know they're out there. We're talking about ETs. I'm a contactee. And I ask the same question, why? Why me? And then you might ask the same question, this is the paranormal thing. Why does all this stuff happen? And what's it about? And what do people know that we don't know? There's a lot of people know a lot more than us. So you want to go to this next book? I like the Hoodoo or whatever. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Let's go there. I
It
like
hasn't.
I
It
like
hasn't. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like the
So it's
title. I like the title of that. So yeah, we'll uh we'll do that one.
yeah. So there's
Um,
Shepton, the myth, miracle, and music, and
um,
then the follow up was Coal Region Hoodoo,
yeah.
paranormal tales from inside the pit. And
Okay.
if you looked there, you could see the miner's helmet,
Right.
and you could see the skulls, and then you could see the stairwell out of hell. And then right between Coal and Region, there's a miner there. There's a ghost of a miner. It's like a 1940s miner coming down there. You have to look hard to see that, but it's really a pretty cool cover. So, um, yeah, I was writing articles for Fate magazine and for Paranormal Underground, for Normal Paranormal, just a whole bunch of magazines like that. And uh, I started to put together a collection of some of these articles I did. I
Mm.
wanted to expand on the Sheppton mythology, and I wanted to talk of more about that, like with Ed Conrad. And so what I did was I put together the Coal Region Hoodoo, and it's what I would call Pennsylvania centric. Now, even though a lot of these stories are based in Pennsylvania, like in the Pennsylvania coal region, I do talk about Bigfoot and UFOs and hauntings and demonology and things that just have widespread appeal, not just
Yes,
in
it does.
Pennsylvania.
It does. And I'm getting more and more into that. Now you do, I made light of hoodoo, but hoodoo is, could you explain what that's, what it means to you, Maxim?
Yeah, I'll tell you exactly why I used it. You know, hoodoo. Most people equate hoodoo with Louisiana and Mississippi. You know, the voodoo, the
Yeah,
bayou. You know,
voodoo.
the
Yeah.
Grigori Gumbayaya and all that.
Yeah.
And voodoo is an actual religion. Hoodoo is a variation of that. Hoodoo could be a religion, but it could just be an ideology. Hoodoo could be either a blessing or a curse. So I decided to use that word hoodoo for the coal region, a blessing and a curse. For example, even though the coal miners were rescued, when they were rescued, there were accusations of cannibalism. So
Right.
not only did they get rescued, but they got demonized and castigated for being cannibals. So, you know, it was just a horrific thing that they had to deal with.
How
But
many miners were there, Maxim, in that, I guess, coal mine when
yeah,
this happened?
there were only three that were there. It was let's see, Dave Fellon, Hank Throne, and Louis Bova. Uh, Davy Fellon was 58. Louis Bova was 28. He was the young one, and then Louis Bova was, I think, 56. So Bova was the one they never found. Bova was the one that uh, people thought was cannibalized, and even Johnny Bova, Louis Bova's son, believed that they might have eaten his father. And every time they interview him with the local northeastern Pennsylvania newspapers, he continues to say that, which I think is horrible. But
Wow. Did they ever
that's
find skeleton remains or anything?
never find anything. And I'll tell you what, Dave. Typically for coal mine disasters, when people went missing, they never went down to retrieve the bodies. And why do you suppose that was?
Well, it's too difficult to get there. Number one, I guess they might lose somebody trying and
Yeah.
figured it was a wasted cause, and they would just put a plaque on the outside of the cave wall, and that'd be it. I guess it's kind of cold, but I'm not. I don't think that. I think the technicalities is what's stopping them, Maxim. Is that am I right?
Yeah, exactly. And the money. And the
Yeah.
money. So, like you said, it would be too dangerous to go down there and try to do the rescue. Plus, it would be too expensive. And so, what they would do is typically, they would just bulldoze the site. They would put some flowers there. The Catholic priest would come and do the last rites of absolution. They would have a marker there, and that would be it. They typically did not go after these people in a rescue attempt. And with Sheppton, it was Davy Fellon's brother, his estranged brother that he hadn't talked to for like 15 years, that demanded that the mining company go there and try to do a rescue. And so what they did was you were asking about government either interference or cooperation. The government, the state government, was able to get funding to go and do this rescue attempt, and so they were able to get the drills and to try to estimate where those miners might be if they were still alive. And they got it right. You know, there were little monkey shafts, and they thought that if they were alive, they might be in those little monkey shafts. So anyway, they were able to find the miners and finally drill down, making the holes bigger and bigger. And that was pretty precarious because if you got it wrong, that whole mine is going to come down on the miner. So even the rescue attempt was precarious. But again, it was a story of international intrigue, a story of human survival,
Right.
and just amazing,
No.
amazing
No.
that
No,
that
Maxim, you wrote what, three books about the Sheppton event, and this second book that we just went through. What how it does it differ from the other book that you wrote? How do they? Is there more information or more scientific data that you got in the second book we just showed?
Yeah, absolutely. In co-region hoodoo, it expands on that whole Sheppton mythology narrative. For example, there's a thing called the third man factor. And this was pointed out to me by a paranormal researcher. The miners saw the apparition, the visitation of Pope John the 23rd. So what was that? Let's put a word on it, okay? As paranormal guys, was it an apparition, a spirit guide? Was it a miracle? I mean, it was one of those. It was one of those. Um, and you might even say, well, it was a hallucination, and you could even go and throw that in there too. But the one individual I was talking to was saying that there's a thing called the third man factor, that during times of physiological stress, whether it's 9/11 or these guys going to the Antarctic, whenever, many times they see another person there accompanying them. It's that third man factor, and it's almost like a spirit guide or a guardian angel giving them a sign. They don't talk, they don't really rescue the person, but they give them hope. And the person I talked to, and I think this is pretty valid. It's possible that vision of Pope John the 23rd was that what represents that third man factor. But again, that third man factor represents guardian angels, spirit guides, something. And I believe that we all have guardian angels,
Yes, we do.
plus our ancestors are there. And on our journey, we have our guardian angel plus our ancestors and the loved ones who have passed on. They're with us, so we're not alone. So
Right.
we're
But
not
these
alone.
miners they've lived in maybe a Catholic town, mostly predominantly Catholic, and that's probably
Yep.
where the seeds were planted for all this. And that third man thing, I think I've seen that myself before. And that is what you're saying is a guardian angel. There's some people that can read guardian angels and they can, sense them. I've had one person I ran into that was able to get messages from guardian angels. And that's a great thing. But I guess the people who don't see the guardian angel, they end up dying. Is that right, Maxim?
Well,
You
that,
never, you don't know. Yeah.
I don't know, but if you were to see a guardian angel, I mean, you're filled with hope and optimism. It allows you to keep on, to take that next breath, the next step. So that's what that does. I mean, all we're all looking for, this is what religion and faith is all about. That tomorrow's going to be a better day, that we're going to get through today's turmoil and turbulence and all that, and tomorrow's going to be more tranquil and peaceful. So just getting us through another day, just like they say in AA and Alcoholics Anonymous, take it a day at a time.
Mhm.
Uh, so yeah, but I think this whole realm of the guardian angels, I think that's probably a big part of the Sheppton mythology.
Right.
And again, I believe as paranormal authors and researchers, it's up to us. It's our responsibility to find a word, to find a definition, to find a genre, and take these things and slot it into that thing until something better comes along and somebody says, no, wait, it makes more sense to be placed here. And let me give you an example that, if I could, I mean, I think this makes sense. I worked in a psychiatric institution with people that were mentally ill and addicted to drugs. We had a client that was, they called her borderline personality disorder. And that's the worst personality disorder of them all, because these are little hell raisers that will go and split one staff against the other. And when the meeting's at 9 o'clock, they'll be there at 9:15, and they break all the rules. And we had a new psychiatrist that came and said, well, no, I don't think that this person is borderline. I think this person has PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, which is a fear phobia that people are defensive, they're guarded, they're waiting for the next explosive thing to happen. And because of that, we sort of started to treat this client in a different way, through a different lens. And I think it worked out. It was just that word, that title, that genre. So that, I think, to me, I mean, that stayed with me because I just thought that was a pretty significant thing. And I think you could draw a parallel between, the paranormal and what we're looking at, right? In my book, The Lost Tribes of Bigfoot, my premise is this: if it's not flesh and blood, if we can't find the bones and the DNA and the hair and everything, if it's not flesh and blood, then what is it? And then let's just take a look at what it could be. It could be mass hallucinations. It could be Jungian collective unconscious. It could be interdimensional, parallel universes. I mean, there's a whole lot of other what ifs or could be's. And those are the things that we need to go and explore and learn about, because that may be where the answers are. Because, you have plenty of Bigfoot hunters out there that are spending time out in the woods looking for, wood knocks and looking for, crazy wood structures and everything else. And coming up with some really intriguing footprints, bigger than anything that any human or bear could make. But
I
we
want to
have,
make one last comment on
yeah,
Sheppton. That third person, I don't. I guess that's mystifies me. What happened to that third person? Even if these other two, their bottom line stories where he was with us, but he was lost. Is that what they're saying?
no, no, no. They were along the journey, and not just with the Sheppton people, but with 9/11, for example.
Hmm.
That was a good people saw uh, other people that were next to them that were helping them get out. They didn't talk to them, they didn't do anything, but they were apparitions. But they believed that they were real flesh and blood people, and they were giving them this cause for hope. And it was called the fourth man factor. In the one Antarctic expedition, there were three people, but there was a fourth person there. And let me see if we have.
Was that a guardian angel or maybe somebody holographically going along?
I
You know,
wouldn't
the
call I
science.
wouldn't call it a holograph. I would say that it was uh, a guardian angel or a spirit guide that manifested, that showed itself. And again, it's like I said, it's up to people like us to figure out what exactly that was.
Yeah, you have a comment in your notes here that Maxim, that you said, what's the difference, or explain the difference between science and supernatural? Well,
Yeah, that's
one, science
yeah,
is academia, and they're hard to convince, and
yeah,
they don't like giving into this paranormal stuff, and they say everything has a scientific reason. What do you think, Maxim?
yeah. And here, I don't know if you could pick this up. This is the Church Army Gazette from 1920. Sir Ernest Shackleton's mysterious third man factor. So there's three guys, but then there was a fourth guy that was there.
Hmm.
And if you could see that, so that was from 1920. So this uh, fourth man, third man factor has been around for a long time. So anyway, that's that.
So,
But
what is the difference between science and supernatural?
yeah,
Explain.
with my book Coleridge and Hoodoo, what I wanted to do was I wanted to go and slot not only the paranormal, but also the spiritual. I wanted to take elements of the spiritual and the paranormal and put them closer to the scientific. And
Mhm.
as far as I'm concerned, there's little difference between the supernatural and the scientific. It's just that we haven't found those laws, those scientific laws. For example, with Newton's law of energy and gravity,
Right.
we see the apple drop. So we see it drop. That's the effect, and the cause we know is Newton's law of gravity. So that's an easy one. But then we see things in the sky. We see apparitions. We see the effect. But scientifically, we don't at this point know what the cause is. Now, there probably is a scientific rationale for these anomalies that we are seeing, but science hasn't yet been able to catch up and give us, their hypothesis or their explanation. So we're waiting not only for us citizen scientists, guys like me and you, to go and figure it out and put names on it, but also we're waiting for the scientific community to go and do the same thing and do their due diligence and and do their research and help us with this.
Well, you have an academic background and you have a research background yourself, investigating your citizen scientist. And now I think the reason why academia is they don't really want to come out with answers. I've interviewed a lot of guys that are scientists and academics, and there's certain things they don't want to say or they want to admit to because they'll get in trouble. I've known a couple of guys that's been on my shows that's been kind of reprimanded because they might have said
Ah,
too much, you know,
yeah,
like space, outer space, and travel, and being with NASA and things of that nature. So they have to be really careful. But I think a lot of times academia is held back because of the big shots or the people that are the puppet masters are
yeah.
controlling things. They're
Wait,
controlling
good
the
term.
money.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So what do you think about that, Maxim? You think that
I agree with that. You're not going to get any argument from me. I mean, who controls the world?
money?
That's an easy one.
Yeah,
People with the power, the money, with the
right.
clout. That's who controls the world. That's who controls the media. That's who feeds us this psychobabble that we're reading and hearing and all that. And I think that maybe programs like yours probably upsets some of those people in the establishment,
Yeah.
because you're probably going against some of their mantras, some of their dogma.
Well,
So
like I said earlier, if you get close to the target, you're going to get more flack, you know,
yeah, yeah,
something like that. But
yeah,
uh, I don't no, I don't wish to stir up trouble. I only want the truth, and I talk to people, and I get the truth out of them, the truth that they know of. And
yeah.
how could I be the judge? I'm not going to be the judge of these people,
Mhm.
because I've seen and I've done things, and things have happened to me that are unbelievable too. I got a book that's loaded with things that happened with me, and it's hard to explain to people. You try to enlighten people, but sometimes it just doesn't go, they don't come across. They're just now accepting the idea there's UFOs, but they
Uh-huh.
don't accept the ideas that ETs are walking amongst us, Maxim. And I think they could be maybe confused with apparitions or supernatural events, or even like guardian angels. Could
Mhm.
these be ETs also, since they're all the same dimensional type individuals that come here? They're extraterrestrial, all of them, even angels. Maxim, what's your thoughts on that?
No, I agree with you. You know that us Homo sapiens won't be able to figure it out. We probably do have guardian angels and aliens walking with us, but I think you said that you saw things, you've seen things, all your life. I believe that there's signs. I think there's miracles and signs all the time. But I think some of us have a certain kind of sensory perception, like an ESP, that
Mm.
we're able to go and see these things that other people don't see. I think it's an ability. And, I think that we all have this ability, but with living in the 21st century, with working a 9 to 5 job, with all the materialism and commercialism and everything else, I think that our innate powers have been sort of muted. And most people don't go and work on them and manifest them and bring them out. But I think some people,
That large suitcase of questions I just asked you, trying to unpack that. I just saw one of your notes, and you were saying that the spiritual and the supernatural, they're a unique blend. And have you found out the difference between spiritual and supernatural? Maxim, can you tell us about that?
well, well, with the spiritual, we're talking about miracles and apparitions and things of faith, and I think that there's a scientific rationale. There's a place where that's going to go and meet. I again, it's another thing that we don't know, but we know scientifically that people that have a strong faith and a belief in God or Allah or whoever, higher power, seem to be more optimistic. Seem to believe that things are going to be better. So I would think that those people, and again, let's just talk as scientists, but I think people that walk that philosophy, that have that philosophy, that that they're strong in their faith, probably maybe have better blood pressure, have a better attitude, have better maybe treat other people with kindness. But if you're filled with all kinds of anger and pessimism, then you're going to take that into the world too, and you're going to be a real bastard, when you interact with other people. So I think that faith and belief in a higher power and religion does bode well, and I think you can measure that scientifically. And
Right.
again, it's
I think that's true too. I mean, we can only go as far as our spiritual currency will take us when we cross the other side. I think if
yeah.
we're going to be I don't think we're really judged that much when we go across, but we do get further if we're kind and loving, and we've accepted this life that we've been given, or that
Mhm.
we chose to. We might
Right.
have chose this life. Who knows?
Yeah.
A lot of people are saying that, and the spiritual thing. I think you have to be a spiritual person to be strong. You have to, this, because God is in us. He's not outside of, he is
Right.
outside of us all over, but he's inside of us. and that we don't have to go any further than that, I think, in spiritual matters. And anybody, like, who chooses, or who is the person who, or the entity or whatever, why do they choose certain people for these spiritual, I guess,
Yeah.
anomalies, or also who chooses contactees? Why are we you just said something about, you alluded it to, Maxim. Why you think certain people are chosen?
Well, that's the
Contactees?
million billion dollar question. I
Okay.
mean, why do these people get the gift? Why is it that some people can see things and others can't? Why are certain people well, listen, even with Padre Pio and Saint Teresa of Avila, they were chosen, to have these miraculous abilities, these gifts, but they also suffered. They were also
Yeah.
chosen to suffer. So that's part of the gig too.
Mhm.
And I don't know. I don't know how that works. I don't know how that works. I know that I like what you said at the beginning of the show. You were talking about kindness. Being kinder to or to mankind. And I know that just a couple of minutes ago, you were sort of shying away from the religious thing. But I'll tell you what, I don't back off on the God talk.
Right. Yeah.
I feel, and let me just say this. I have a strong faith and a belief, and I believe that my faith is between me and my higher power.
Right.
So I don't go and broadcast it, and I don't try to get somebody else to come over to my side and
Mhm.
sign on the dotted line and be in what I believe.
Yeah.
It's sacred and sacrosanct only because it's personal. It's my private thing, nobody's business, and I don't have to go out there and
Yeah.
scream and shout.
And the religions shouldn't have to battle each other for the higher
Yeah,
ground. I mean, that's crazy.
yeah.
It's ludicrous. Let's get into this last book I think I have on. Uh, you have a lot of books, but what I'm saying is there's three of them that I've had lined up, and
Yeah, that's
that
the
one.
and
That's
that's the rock and roll
oh yeah,
book. And Somebody Else's Dream was about the song Timothy from 1971 that paralleled what happened in Sheppton. So this is the book that sort of put it together for me. And it's amazing, though, that that Timothy, the song, and Sheppton went hand in hand. So there's another book about Sheppton. I mean, boy, I should copyright that name because I mean,
yeah. Now
I have.
the last question. I know this we brought the story up earlier, and I'm showing the book. You showed the book too, but have you ever met any of these band guys? And we'll conclude with that part of it.
All of them. Yeah, I met all of them, and
Really?
not all of them are alive now, but yeah, I had a chance to hang out with them. See, they were local. They were a local band,
Right.
so I hung out with them. I knew them. I saw them. They were a really, really good band, and the lead singer was considered to be the lead singer for Boston and
Mhm.
also for the
Wow.
Pure Prairie League. So I mean, he was
Oh,
really had
okay.
some good pipes,
Okay.
but
I don't think
anyway,
I
yeah, that
have. Yeah, I don't think I have that book. I do. I think I have that on the. Oh, let me try to go back in my files again, and let me see if I can bring this up.
oh, that was Flying Saucer Esoteric. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Let me see if I can bring that up.
Okay. Well, your desktop is full. I can tell you're a busy guy, Dave.
Yeah, I am. I have a lot of files, and my computer. You can see right here. It's red. It's almost in the total red zone.
Yeah,
I
really, huh?
I have to clean it up again, and I have to kind of unload it so I can have more room. Let's
Okay,
see. I have. No, I don't. I guess
here's UFOs WW1 big cover. No, is that it?
no. That's a. I did.
Sheppton Hoodoo,
I,
somebody else's dream.
I guess I didn't get that one in there, buddy.
Okay.
Let's talk about it though.
Yeah. Okay.
Um,
So
uh,
yeah, let's.
I want to talk about it, but also I wanted to mention this article that I got. It's from ancient scripts to modern scripts, flying saucer esoteric explores UFO phenomena. And let me read a little bit about this. Flying saucer esoteric unveils a mesmerizing series of events that have become, yeah, there's the book, Thank you. I thought I uploaded that on my files. I'm sorry, buddy. I thought that
That's
was
okay.
one of, I looked at it and I tried to upload it. I guess it didn't hit. I was moving fast and trying to upload them,
Oh, that's okay. What you're doing is fantastic. So
Thank you. I had a busy day. I come into this real fast and I started uploading these. I had your notes, but I didn't upload those pictures I wanted to. So everybody knows what a busy day is. And I lost a friend,
yeah,
Ed Smith in California. A lot of people on this show might know about the Universal Digest, and he's a nice guy. And I put a show in that him and I did over 2 years ago, and I put that in as a memorial to him. And that, yeah, that bothers me. Like you said a while ago, when
yeah,
people pass away, it takes a part of you. And
sure it does.
it says the events that have become ingrained in our collective psyche. This book intricately blends the extraordinary stories of contactees, abductees, space travelers, and even hoaxers, creating a vibrant and diverse tapestry of enriches that field of ufology, enriches the field of ufology. That's small print. Forgive me for that.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
this is the copy of it. Uh,
Yeah, nice. Yeah. Yeah. And that appeared in Paranormal Underground. It was a wonderful, wonderful review
yeah,
of my book. And I think you and I might have made contact. I think I might have sent that to you.
yeah. This is
But it
fun
was,
stuff.
you asked if I had a publicist.
Yeah,
And
yeah. I also got part of
oh,
this.
yeah,
FA what?
yeah. That's in Greenwich Village. And we might be using some of that on the back of The Lost Tribes of Bigfoot.
hmm
So I think we're going to do that.
Okay, could you tell us from ancient scripts to modern secrets? Where did we, is history all wrong? Did we lose a lot of history and the elites have kept it away from us, Maxim?
Well, I'll tell you what, what's interesting is that since the days before Christ, people have been seeing things in the sky, things that they can't explain. And, whether they were theologians or scientists. And, the big one was 1947. I mean, people have always seen things, but in 1947, you had Kenneth Arnold, who saw the 9 flying discs off of Mount
Right.
Rainier, and he was an experienced pilot, and he thought at first that they were military experimental military vehicles, but he estimated their speeds were like maybe 1 or 2 thousand miles an hour. They're really fast, and he described them as disc, as a saucer skimming across the water, and so the journalist called these discs flying saucers. So that's how the name flying saucer came into the lexicon. So that happened in 47. And then right after that, we had Roswell, where outside of Roswell, something crashes. The government, and I went out to Roswell and I met Walter Haupt, and he was the Army Air Force. It was called Army Air Force at the time before they split them up. And he was their publicist. So he put out the thing, Army Air Force captures flying disc. So they put that out there. The whole world knew that we got a saucer. And then they changed it and they said, no, it was just a weather balloon. And so what they did was they had the same thing, it was Jesse Marcel. I think he was the guy. They paraded him there and had him holding this parachute like thing, this fabric,
Mhm.
and made it, and it was just contrived. I mean, nobody believed that. So that was the first Lion cover up. Then they said that it was actually Project Mogul, that it was a large weather balloon that was going up there to determine whether or not the Soviet Union was setting off underground nuclear explosions. So Project Mogul had sensitive equipment that could go and find that. Then the next was Project Oxcart, which is a humongous balloon that was also used for, it was a secret military thing that was used for, for spying and everything. So the government kept on changing things, covering up, I mean, blatantly lying to the public,
Mhm.
and then making excuses. And so with Roswell, the last we heard was from uh, the guy from David Grush from the congressional UFO hearings of 2023, and saying that he knows where the bodies are and the vehicles are. Now, what I did was, I was living in Florida at the time. I contacted Senator Marco Rubio, and Marco Rubio
Okay.
was part of the
Right.
committee.
hmm
And I wrote him a letter, and I said, listen, Grush is saying all this stuff. How about making him show his cards? He's saying he knows where the bodies are, he knows where the crafts are. How about making him show his cards? How about taking this a little bit further? So Markle sent me a letter, and I'm sending him another letter just to keep this thing going. But now's a good opportunity. I mean, the government seems to be responsive, seems to be a little bit more transparent, although I'm still very
Yeah,
frustrated and skeptical because they're talking a good talk and
I don't think the politicians or the Pentagon have any control of this. I think there's higher ups that are stopping it, and actually could be the ETs that are not ready to show themselves to us, or you have these elites who already have a lot of their scientific technology and they don't want to share it with us
yeah.
because they're using it on us. I want to make one more note on the Roswell thing. I had Jesse Marcel Jr.,
Oh,
the grand
yeah, yeah. Oh,
yeah.
wonderful. Yeah,
Yeah, I had him on the show a couple of
yeah,
years ago, and all through the thing that he was talking about, I mean, he a lot of the things that he was saying was good and detailed, but there was always one thing that I pick out of an interview that really hits me and tells me this is true. He told me a story about his grandfather, the Jesse Marcel,
yeah,
and they were fishing. He was only about 10 years old, somewhere in there, and they were fishing, and he was kind of quiet guy, Jesse Marcel, the one, the older one, and his grandpa. He looked at his grandson. He said, "Son," he said, "they're real." He said, "Don't let anybody tell you any different."
wow,
And when he told me that, I thought that is real, because when a grandfather is sitting there real quiet and he turns to his grandson and makes that comment, and the grandson was kind of perplexed. He looked at him. He said, "I didn't." He said, "I didn't know what to say back." He said, "But I think from that statement, that sounds like it's very real."
yeah.
The way he said it, and I thought, wow, that smacked real quick of me, thinking, yeah, that was the one line that was the killer line. Now, abductees. You said you've interviewed some abductees and people like that, Maxim.
No, I have. Let me see. No, most of the people that I interact with are people that come up to me and tell me that they've seen orbs. They've seen these shimmering orbs,
Hmm.
and they've also talked to dead people. So that's pretty much what I get. I don't believe I've ever spoken with anybody who's been abducted, but I get the orbs a lot. And people seek me out when I do my programs, my trainings. I mean, they'll see me during you know, um, during the recess or whatever, during the book signing, and they'll tell me about these things. I mean, it's pretty prevalent. A lot of people are seeing these things and try to make sense of them, and also a lot of people seem to be talking to entities that have passed on. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, they're coming to me looking for answers, but I have no answers. All I have is conjecture.
Right.
You know,
Well,
so I don't know. I don't know what that means.
you have academic background in psychology, also worked on in psychology. Some of these people, a lot of experts are saying, or academia is saying, that these people are having these dreams and they're just dreams that don't mean anything. And they're sometimes, if you have a lucid dream, I've had lucid dreams, very real, that I never forget any detail. And with you having a psychology background, and you hear these stories from people, can you tell the difference between just a regular fear dream, or a person that comes up with their own cerebral things, or if it's a real dream or a lucid dream that really happened? Can you differentiate that, Maxim?
Well, I don't know if I could differentiate it, but depending on the content of a dream, you could tell what the person is concerned with, what they're seeing, what their experiences, whether they're running from something or maybe optimistic and hopeful that this is, like a benevolent spirit.
Right.
Uh, I hang my hat a lot on Jung's collective unconscious, that a lot of what we experience, I believe, may be part of that DNA residue from way back when, from our ancestors. And what happens is, like, they see, say, a saber-toothed tiger, and that causes fear, so that goes into their amygdala. And whenever we see anything that's like that or similar to that, we have that response. So that DNA, that thing that happened, hundreds of thousands of years ago, stays with us, you know, and there, and it's in our primitive limbic system. So when you see something that scares you, it's immediately it's fight, flight, or freeze. You got to do something. You have
Right.
a second to do something, but it's based on what's stored in the amygdala and what the brain has filed away as what's being dangerous. So, we see something that looks like Bigfoot,
Hmm.
and immediately, we get scared and we get defensive and all that. But, what is that? Again, the question is, what is it? What are we experiencing? What are we seeing?
Right.
And, again, I think we need more scientists and even psychiatrists to get involved. It's like John Mack. John Mack
Right.
was big into the abductees from
Great guy.
Harvard University, and
Right.
and he was castigated too
Hmm.
for his beliefs, for going against the scientific domain and all that.
He took a big step back then in Harvard, even, the
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. Yeah,
very,
I
uh,
know.
very stringent school in which they didn't want to make their professors look like they were, talking crazy out there in the public. So yeah,
Yeah,
they have a reputation to protect. But I see things like that with a seed planet. You're talking about, having a seed planet of fear, and then you dream. Well, that's happened to me. But
okay.
I myself analyzed myself. I said, okay, all right, I saw that here about 2 or 3 days ago, and it planted the memory to me, and I dreamed about it a little bit. So yeah, I can say, okay, that's a knockoff. That's nothing to do with my abductee or contactee experiences. So I try to analyze myself. And hypnosis, I tried that one time. It didn't work. It backfired. The woman,
Yeah.
she was hypnotized. I wasn't. So
Okay. Okay. Wow.
it's weird. It's so
Yeah.
it's a play on energy, I guess. But what do you think about hypnosis, Maxim, since you've worked in psychology?
Well, there's a thing with false memories. And I think the psyche has a need for balance and homeostasis. We need things to flow. So let's say that there's a gap. Let's say that, what was the one? Was it not Travis Walton? Uh, the fire in the sky, the
Yeah, that's
electrician.
Travis. That's Travis Walton. Yeah,
Okay,
Einstein.
Travis Walton. Okay,
Mhm.
let's say that you're zapped and something happens, you have a blackout or a gray out, so there's a part of your mind that's vacant, there's nothing there.
Mhm.
We have a mechanism called confabulation where we could actually go and create images to go in there to give us that homeostasis. So it's a possibility that some of these things that we see, the mind is actually confabulating and making things up. And if you look at it historically, chronologically, maybe back in the old days we might have seen a chariot, a golden chariot, or maybe an angel, or maybe a witch, and maybe today it would be a flying saucer or a Bigfoot or something else. So all of these things, that we have seen, these apparitions, these
Right.
paranormal things, there's a chronology of them from old days to modern times, and sometimes what we confabulate fits in with that. So that's but a theory. That's just a theory. There's probably people that experience things that are real. It's paranormal. We can't explain it, but that's what it is.
Right.
But again,
Yep.
you look at all of the possibilities, and the thing that with the UFOs that always upset me was that back in the 50s and 60s and 70s, somebody would see a UFO and immediately the scientific community would say that they're crazy, they're
Mhm.
needy, they're delusional, it's marsh gas, it's reflections off of Venus, I mean, and all these other things, rather than, and Alan J. Hynek finally said that. He said, let's be respectful as scientists. Let's be respectful of these people that are seeing things and listen to what they're saying and at least try to get to step into their shoes and see what they're saying. So Alan Hynek was one of the first. He was a doubter at first, but he eventually came around and believed, and he gave us so much. He gave us with the uh, Close Encounters, and also with the levels of high strangeness and all that, which was, again, like you and I, Dave, he's given us uh, terminology, he's given us words and genres to slot these things in. So
Like
Alan J. Hynek did a lot for our genre, our craft.
fitting pieces of the puzzle. Everybody I talk to, I fit a piece of the puzzle that I have in me and happened to me in my all throughout my life. Now let's get back on this topic of this is your latest book, right? That's
Yeah,
the
flying saucer esoteric. Yeah.
Ancient Scripts to Modern Secrets. Could you give us a synopsis of that book? And is that about like historical ancient people were smarter than we were? Am I on the right track there, Maxim?
Yeah. Well, we don't know. I mean, a lot of people seem to think that ancient aliens came down here and they gave us the pyramids and Nazda and all these other things. And you know, I don't know. I don't know about that. I think that even with the pyramids, I don't believe that it was ancient aliens that did that. I think that the ancient man was so sophisticated that today we don't even know how they built the pyramids.
Mhm.
Uh, we know that they were used for some astrological purposes, and but we can't figure all of that out. And they keep on thinking about maybe using 200,000 slaves and fulcrums and pillars and everything else, but we haven't figured it out yet. And those pyramids are so precise and everything. I mean, it would take, just like computers to put this together. So we don't know. I'm saying that we don't give ancient man credit for their sophistication and their science and their technology. And we just think that they were ancient and that we're better and smarter and wiser than them. Well, you know what? We're more arrogant than they were. And that's because of our technology and because we live in 2024. We have that arrogance and we think that, and we think that science is going to help us. Well, science hasn't been helping us. I mean, look at Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and look at global warming, and look at the state of the world and everything else. And yeah, we're close to that, pressing that button, and we got
Right. Yeah.
plenty
Scary.
plenty of countries that got the bomb.
Scary.
And let's hope that everybody pulls back and we have some common sense. But that's science. Science did that, and and then when we
There's
saw,
another. Yeah, there's another
pardon?
theory, Maxim. There's another theory about this ancient, technology that the ETs have been off and on this planet for thousands of years. They go back to 60,000 years with the Anunnaki. Now
Yeah,
they're
right,
thinking that humans learned a lot with these visitors that come years and thousands of years ago. They learned a lot from it, and then they kept passing it down to the high priest and
right.
the elites and the kings and queens. They knew all this knowledge, but the commoner did not know the knowledge. They kept that away from us, just like they're doing now.
Yeah.
Is that does your book kind of get into that part of it?
Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, as a former practicing Catholic, I want to say that when I was raised Catholic, if you wanted to understand the Bible, you would go to the priest, and the priest would interpret the Bible for you. That wasn't like my Protestant brothers and sisters. They were taught to read Scripture and to learn it. Now that's changed. That's changed in the Catholic Church. They want us to read the Bible and all that. So that was just one example of knowledge
Mhm.
being sort of relegated to the upper echelons, okay, to certain people. So
Right.
the like esoteric knowledge. So that's part of it. But yeah, that's a theory that a lot of people are talking about, that there were aliens that came down, angels that interbred with Earth women and created either the Nephilim or other races that were genetically more superior to Homo sapiens. So I know I've read the books. I mean, Eric von Daniken made $1 billion on that one, talking about that. And so it's a popular theory, and
Yeah, they say the Palladians and the Arcturians were the Atlanteans, and
okay,
they passed on knowledge. And you can read the books, the ancient biblical, books, and find out that people did leave; they never come back.
okay,
Even Muhammad back in 550 A.D., he was on the mount there, where in Israel, and he was lifted to the sky, and he never come back. And certain and Ezekiel the same way.
yeah, yeah, the wheel within the wheel, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, they were taken. They were abducted and never come back. And
yeah,
and once they did, they would talk about seeing fantastic things and other lands and
right, yeah,
and flying and things like that. So I really think there has been some kind of ET contact probably millions of years back. I mean, our DNA, the scientists say, is 4.5 billion years old.
Okay.
We could have been here and back and forth, many times.
Yeah.
So, and destroyed ourselves like fools. And why
Yeah.
do these ETs? Why do they want to mess with us? Since we're just going to end up destroying ourselves, Mac.
I know, yeah, yeah. I do want to say, Dave, though, just for a little bit of self-promotion, if any of your
Sure.
viewers are into flying saucers, please consider this Flying Saucer Esoteric. It's sort of a reference book, a history, a chronology of the flying saucers from the days before Christ
Right.
to the congressional hearing. So it's all in there, and it's a wonderful reference book. And I mean, we're just getting, I'm getting a lot of good feedback for it. So,
Yeah, I find it very interesting myself, just looking at the synopsis on this page you give me. And yes, I always look for connections of how this all started, and of course, why me, why me, why me. But Maxim, to sum up the UFOs, we talked about disclosure, and you talked about Rubio. I think he's pretty good man for trying his best on that.
yeah.
Why, let me ask this big question, Maxim. Why are ETs and UFOs here, and why are we seeing so many now? And they're more than what they used to be in the past. What do you think about that, Maxim?
Well, first of all, I think it's all about fear. I think there's less fear now to come forward and disclose what we're seeing. And again, the government has, there was some legislation passed about that, that whistleblowers would not have anything come back on them. In the case of David Grush, and I want to point this out.
Yeah.
He interviewed 40 people. Now he didn't see the saucers or he didn't see the bodies, but he talked to 40 people, 40 government officials. Now these are government people that have good jobs, good paying jobs, and they have good pensions. They don't want to muck that up. They don't want to go and go on record and and for talking like you had talked about earlier. So they have to watch themselves. But these 40 people disclosed confidentially to David Grish what they saw by retro engineering all these things. So I think that uh, nonetheless, I think there's the fear factor, and some people are reluctant to come forward, like government workers, but
Mm.
other people now I think are just having more courage to come out and say, okay, I don't care if you think I'm crazy, this is what I saw. And there was a whole bunch of us that saw, and so many times that it's not just one person that saw this thing, but there were numerous ones. And I'll tell you one thing else. I mean, if you're a non-believer, take a look at the United States Navy video of the little Tic Tac thing that they saw off the coast of San Diego. Faster and more maneuverable than anything that we have. I mean, with G-forces, that if there was a pilot there, the G-force would kill us. So they believe it was some sort of a manned or intelligently controlled craft, and it was UAP, unidentified
Aerial.
aerial phenomenon. And then when it went underwater, they said, wait a second, maybe we need to call this unidentified anomalous phenomenon because
Yeah.
it's not just aerial. So it went under the water. So that was the big one. That was the United States Navy, and those pilots tried to stay up with it, but they saw it, they talked about it. When I was in the Navy, I was a Vietnam veteran. I was aboard the USS Constellation, an aircraft carrier. I was a radarman, and I saw numerous UFOs. We would put them in the logbook as UFOs with the range and bearing. The next day, and here's the thing, they would tell us, and all of us guys were like under the age of 20. We were just little babies
Right.
run,
That's when I started. Yeah, I
yeah,
started.
running that war.
Yeah.
They told us, keep your mouth shut. Don't tell anybody what you saw.
Right.
And then I would go and look through those log books and see all these UFO sightings. I mean, there's all over the place, by us radarmen. And then the next day, that log book would disappear and it would be replaced by a brand new one. We'd start all over again. It was the
Mhm.
same thing. And I've talked to numerous people, I mean, in all branches of the service, it was the same thing. They saw things and they were told to keep your mouth shut. Don't tell anybody about it. So,
Yeah.
and back then we were law abiding.
Right.
This was,
Yeah.
we were young kids, and we were, we were loyal.
Yeah,
So
we were good soldiers too.
yeah, we were. Yeah,
Yeah, but
and thank you for your service too.
yeah, thank you too, brother. But, your guns, your battleship guns couldn't reach where I was at. I was in Pleiku next to
Okay. Yeah.
Cambodia. pretty
Yeah.
close there. So those guns couldn't reach there. I think they were reaching what 20 to 26 miles, but we were way inland. Uh,
Yeah.
but I never saw anything. I was asked, even by Linda Moulton Hall, did I see anything in Vietnam? Because a lot of soldiers, like I was in the army and I was an infantryman, I was a platoon sergeant. I had 42 guys, but I I never seen anything weird. I mean, our skies were lit up all the time with tracers and
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
flares, so we couldn't tell if something moved around. But I didn't really see anything, and some soldiers have, and
Uh-huh.
they've actually seen aliens in the jungles, and
Oh wow.
I
Wow.
never seen that.
Yeah.
So there's and aliens actually flying saucers actually fired at some of our planes. They've returned the same bomb that they sent out from the missile that they sent out, and the missile returned back and hit this one. There was a story, I can't remember exactly when it happened, but I think it was in 67, 68, probably about the time that you were there, and it's happened to
Yeah.
the Air Force.
Yeah.
It just took the missile and slung it back at the plane. And it said like
Wow.
it ricocheted and come back and hit them. And they actually, reason why they know that, because they took a study of it, and they found the missile that hit them, and it was theirs.
Yeah.
So that was
That
real.
would make a great book, UFOs over Vietnam.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know enough about it. I didn't see anything. I saw
Yeah.
everything here back in the States. Okay, we're can't believe that we're up to an hour and a half, Maxim. And could you tell us where we could find your books and any activity that you got going on the internet?
Yeah. Like I said, The Lost Tribes of Bigfoot, that's going to be my fourth paranormal book. That's coming out in September by Hanger One.
Yeah,
Friends, they're from Monster Quest. So I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be an exciting thing. And I expect to be doing a number of podcasts, and maybe we could reconnect and talk about Bigfoot if down the
sure.
line. So,
I like to get the Bigfoot topic on there. I like cryptids and Bigfoot. I want to see. Like I said, up just north of me, somebody some years back saw a cryptid, and then here recently somebody saw something weird going across the road, and they couldn't tell what it was as a cryptid.
yeah.
And we got black bear that's coming down southern Illinois, and we've never had that before. So now we got, and we're infiltrated with black bear. So these things migrate, cryptids migrate, whatever they all do. So
Mhm.
we can find your books on Amazon. What are the
Yeah,
platforms?
Amazon, I think Barnes and Noble. And then I have a website. It's maximfuric.com. It's www.maximfuric.com. That's MAXIMFUREK.
Right.
And
I've got that website, and I will put it in the narrative.
yeah, good. And then if anybody would want to contact me directly, they could do it through my website, and we could chat. So,
Okay.
but
Great.
but yeah, I appreciate this opportunity, and yes, some very good probing questions. And it's not just one thing. It's this whole thing is just like a whole bundle of energy and vibrations, and just a whole lot of stuff. So this is
Right.
it's
Right.
amazing.
I enjoy this show, and I'm going to tell you something. You say you're up in age, and you're around my age, maybe a couple of years older, but you sound like a 30-year-old. You wouldn't have to take an acuity test, buddy. I'm telling you, you're pretty sharp and you're quick. And
God.
you keep this noggin going. I can tell. I
Okay.
appreciate that.
I hope the 20-year-old listeners are listening to this.
Now, well, that's the shame. We don't get too many young listeners in UFOs. They're not that interested. If
Yeah,
if they see them at a mall in Miami, they might get interested, but they're not interested
yeah.
in the UFO topics. We don't get that many. You can see all of the all of my charts and stuff, the graphs, that the younger ones, there are very, very few. So
Hmm.
I want to thank you for doing the show, Maxim Fury. And thank you so much for your books and your enlightenment to people. You've been listening to the Dave Emmons Strange Reality Show, and we want to thank everybody for listening in and watching. And thank you, Maxim Furyk, for being on the show and giving a great interview. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And
Thanks, Dave.
and good
Appreciate it.
night.
Good night.